All right. Okay, so we're here today again at the Free Play Podcast. We're talking about where we get our games for Free Play Arcade. We've previously already had 3 podcasts, almost all of them talking about the Kelly Ray deal, where we bought 100-plus games, just dozens and dozens and dozens of parts, new old stock monitors. I mean, it was a crazy deal. We've pretty much exhausted that deal. We've gone through all of it. Basically, that was the start of Free Play Arcade's arcade collection in earnest. We had some games before, but 100 game shot, 120 game shot, amazing. Really got us going. So if you're interested in kind of figuring out where we started, check out those last 3 podcasts. But now we're going to go ahead and move on and discuss our other sources, because since that 120 game lot, we've bought probably 1,000, 1,500 games, who knows? And we get them from all sorts of places. And first up, we've kind of touched on this before. We're going to talk about auctions, arcade auctions.
We go to a lot of auctions.
Well, we're really lucky. DFW happens to be a pretty popular hub of everything. Mm-hmm. It's got a huge airport. It's centrally located to just about any major arcade operator in the South. So since I've been into arcades, Dallas has had a major auction. And every time it seems like maybe that's going to stop, a new auction company comes in and starts hosting pretty sizable arcade auctions. So I guess if you could, let's start and let's kind of talk about how the auctions are set up.
All right.
Let's talk about game numbers, everything like that. So you walk into, where are these auctions at?
Well, for the first one that you ever went to was over at the Big Town Mall space, right?
Yes. And I think by the time I started going to that auction, which
company was running that one?
I think that was still AAA.
Okay.
And then it became AAA again, American Amusement Auctions. Super Auctions was there. And there were 2 other auction companies, I can't remember the names offhand, that were all operating out of Big Town. And Big Town, the reason, of course, is Big Town is probably the cheapest events venue around, except for where they're actually holding auctions now, and we'll get to that. So that was, I guess, probably 6 years ago.
And these are the physical auctions. We also had some online auctions, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later.
Sure. And these physical auctions are at random event places, any place they can get cheap space and just fill it with arcade games that they're going to auction off. And I guess as a precursor, Texas auction law is pretty weird. The seller can bid on their own item. The auction company isn't even prohibited from having people there that are just there to spice things up. Now, they're not allowed to be paid by the auction company, but they are allowed to bid on whatever at the auction company's direction. And also, the auction company is allowed to have reserves, is allowed to bid for the seller of the item. It's kind of like a Wild West situation. So, not only do you have to be careful when you're in an auction to not spend too much and get into a bidding war with a third party, you're also kind of watching out for the auction company or the seller of the game trying to milk you for extra money.
Well, and that's one of the difficult things at auctions. Now, you're very good at auctions, but when you walk into an auction venue, there are sometimes it's a small auction with 40, 50 games on the floor. Sometimes it's massive with 200-300 games on the floor. Everything from new redemption games all the way through the classics that, of course, we collect. And Corey has a knack for being able to tell who has brought which games to the auction to sell for commission, and who is actually there just bidding for games. And, over the years, he's gotten better at this because he not only knows all of the local operators, but all of the other people who are buying for different commercial businesses and nonprofits and different things as well. And he's got an interesting history with all of the other bidders at some of these auctions.
Well, it's true. And what we've talked about before is we have a weird kind of reputation in the arcade community because we buy so many products. We buy so many arcades. And often we're willing to pay more than a lot of people because those games, in one way or another are worth more to us than they might be to anyone else.
Even private collectors in a lot of circumstances.
Well, if it's a gap in our collection, I mean, even if we have 1,000 games, if we don't have that game, it's probably more worth it to us than almost anyone in the world.
Yeah.
So we're willing to really spend and get that game. But obviously, being willing to spend almost anything on certain games means you're going to irritate a lot of people. And over the course of probably the 3 dozen auctions I've been to, I have irritated a lot of people, and it's never personal for me, but it's definitely can get personal for other people. I employ all sorts of dumb lawyer-style negotiation strategy in my auctioning, and no one likes it. No one likes it when I'll do like what's called a power bid, where the auctioneer will be looking for something like $500, and I'll just say $600 or $700 just to kill the auction right there and try to get the item for what if I'm doing that, I probably think the item's worth $900 or $1,000, but everyone knows at that point I'm willing to pay anything and they're going to drop out.
Yeah.
Or do something ridiculous. And here I am giving away all my secrets because at the end of the day, I'm willing to pay what I'm willing to pay for the game. And if it goes above it, I just stop.
All right. So before we had been going to the auctions, though, we had been buying from a lot of private sellers, a lot of different things like that. And we had gotten, and we had, of course, had the Calgary deal where we had learned a lot of the value of what people were willing to spend on different games in different conditions, done a lot of research on all of this. Now, Corey has an amazing knack for keeping and retaining all of this information in his head. And so when we started going to these auctions, it got out of control. I mean, I think the first one, we were still on a rental truck. Were we on a rental truck for that?
Oh yeah. We were on a rental truck with a ramp.
Yeah, like a U-Haul truck or something. And Corey buys, I think, 17 games the first time we're there because he's like, they're only like $300 a piece.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, I knew that these games were going for too cheap. We didn't even have an arcade plan. We didn't have anything.
Oh, not at all.
But I knew that the value was too low, and just in my head, I said, if I buy this now, it'll be worth more later. Mm-hmm. So whatever we do, if we have to sell it, if we open an arcade, it doesn't matter. I know that that's too cheap. And some of these early auctions we were going to, they'd have, 200 or 300 actual arcade games, and then 200 or 300 redemption games, and then all sorts of gambling games and pinball machines and pool tables, you name it, darts. And so you could have an auction with 800 items. Mm-hmm. And
the kids' rides.
Right. And buying 17 or 18 items, to me, didn't seem like a big deal. But everyone else started being like, who the heck are these guys? Mm-hmm. What are they doing and why? And
and when we started, we were wearing the, Hayden Industry shirts.
Oh, yeah.
We started this. This was before Free Play, so we didn't have any Free Play shirts. And Corey had made these cheap, solid white shirts that just said Hayden Industries, always winning.
Yeah,
and
I'm terrible.
When we showed up with a group, because it was him, me, his dad, Corey's best friend, Paul, we were all there doing these things, and when we showed up with the four of us in these shirts,
uniform matching outfits,
everyone was just like, what is going on? Who are these people?
Well, yeah, and by the time we showed up with shirts, I was buying like 30 games. Still had no idea what I was going to do.
We were just cramming them in storage units.
Well, I was like, these are still way too cheap. And some of those games made it to the floor.
Yeah. Plenty of them.
Right. Well, that was the thing. The auction, if you're good at kind of identifying game issues really fast, or if you're good at knowing a lot of different game values, there's a lot of value there. Even nowadays that prices have kind of come up, and we'll kind of talk about that evolution. But it's really, really amazing how when you have that many games, even if you have a couple hundred buyers, there's going to be awesome deals hidden in there that most people will miss, as long as you've done a ton of research and really learned about these games.
Mm-hmm.
So when you walk into one of these places, it's just lines and lines of games. And there's no real rhyme or reason. They try to group them in like real arcade games, redemption games, but it's just scattered throughout. And they'll always start on like the higher end games that they think are going to sell, like a 60-in-1 emulation thing that they're trying to snag a home buyer for a good price on, or a Miss Pac or a Galaga. They'll always put those at the front because those home buyers are there and they know those are going to sell pretty well.
Well, they're the games that people are going to show up, and they're not going to sit around for 4 or 5 hours for them to get through everything until they reach that point. Only the people like us who are crazy actually stick around to the end.
Right, and that's something to talk about. Some of these auctions can take, we've had auctions take 8 or 9 hours.
Mm-hmm.
There's been auctions where I've bought 30 or 40 items, and we're already loading them up, but the auction's still going in the background, and I'll kind of peer over, and I'll be like, wait, maybe I want that. And I'll run over there, I'll buy another thing, and then run back, and we're still loading
we'll
our 30.
Have to cash out a second time.
Well, and obviously there's something really cool about auctions. They're exciting, they're fun, and for us, it's a one-stop shop. Well, we can get a lot of stuff.
You never know what you're going to find at an auction. A lot of these people, they're private sellers, just bringing out the things from their collections that they no longer want. Sometimes it's operators or companies that are reducing or trying to change up the games that they're hosting. And so you get things from not only locally, but they're brought in from around the country. and you never know if you're going to show up and they're going to have absolute garbage that you don't even want to touch, and then we still probably buy a truckload.
That's probably true.
And or we're going to show up and, rent another truck to use in addition to our truck so that we can bring 3 or 4 loads home.
Well, and the real thing is, as time went on, and almost right when I started going to auctions, the operators are the ones who stopped really selling the real retro stuff, because that was finally at the end of them trying to route that stuff or operate that stuff out in the world. And you'd have the home collectors that were bringing their real retro stuff. And then that said, the operators were still bringing kind of cool stuff. The Area 51s, the Daytona USAs, that kind of stuff was still kind of retro. It was 90s. And they were still making money up until about 2010, 2015. So we saw a slew of that stuff come through. And we know that stuff is cool. And when they bring in so much of it, and that's all the operators kind of stopped. Like Area 51 in 2015 or so, everyone said we don't want Area 51 anymore. So we ended up with like 7 Area 51s. And just because we know they're super cool, and we know those games will be popular in the future. Area 51's a great game.
Oh yeah.
Cruising USA, unbelievably good.
Well, there's a reason that it's in every CC's Pizza that you ever go to, that it's been in all of the Chuck E. Cheese's, that it's been in all of those
Dave &
arcades.
Buster's would have 8 of them lined up.
Yeah.
They'd have a huge raceway just for cruising.
That's been a while now, but yeah.
Cruising, Daytona, California Speed, all of those racing games survived until about the mid-2010s.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they all wanted to get rid of it, which the unfortunate part about those games is they're huge. So that's why we have like 5 warehouses.
Racer Row.
Right. We have warehouses and warehouses of games because they're big. And that's another concept that, like, it's really hard to fully understand when you're buying at the quantities that we buy, just how big the stuff we're buying. When we buy 15 to 30 games at an auction, that's like 3 or 4 truckloads. That would fill most people's 2-car garages.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And we do that probably 3 or 4 times a year at auction, just buy those games. And
in addition to all of the other games that we buy in the course of a year.
Well, and sometimes we have no plans for them. Sometimes we're just buying them because we think that the parts might be good. Sometimes we're buying them because they're a cool game. Mm-hmm. And I guess what are the coolest things we've bought at auction?
Ooh, at auction. Well, I guess we negotiated our original Black Knight as one of the first things that we did. So that wasn't actually an auction.
That's a good point, though. What happens at a lot of these auctions is the buyers, like I said earlier, they can bid on their own items, and these buyers get greedy, and next thing you know, the buyers keep buying back their own stuff. And one of the people that they love to come to at the end of the auction and be like, okay, I don't really want to take home all these games I've bought back. Let's make a deal. And that's actually what's resulted in our original Black Knight pinball, which was a launch pinball at Free Play Richardson.
Well, and it's an awesome game.
Well, and we use the auctions as a good kind of connecting point with other collectors. So we'll make a bunch of side deals often before the auction, and we'll just meet at the auction, which is where our Major Havoc, dedicated Amplifone Major Havoc. I mean, that was our first...
On the floor at Free Play Richardson right now, by the way.
Which it's the only all-original Major Havoc that I'm aware of that's available to the public. All the others have either been changed to a 6100, and there's only like 2 or 3 others. But it is completely all original, and every major arcade collector that comes and sees that game is just like, I don't even understand what you're doing. Why would you put that out? And it's just, we love really cool, rare games.
Well, if people can't play these games, then what's the point in having them?
Right. Well, yeah, and that's so we never buy anything that's just going to have to go on a shelf. So
we've had a few things in our collection that we legitimately have had to make that decision on, and at first it was a lot harder when we were looking at some of our pieces, going, "Ooh, it's so nice," but ultimately we love arcade games, and it's about sharing these games with people. So it was worth it to us to maintain them and try and get them on the floor, accessible for people to play, even if it's just for special events or different things like that.
All right, so let's see. What have we bought at auction that's like ultra
rare?
Awesome. We got our Return of the Jedi recently at auction.
Which was awesome.
And in true auction form, we bought it thinking it was in pretty good condition and then spent 20 or 30 or 40 hours reworking the whole game so that it was good enough to go on one of our floors. But it was a Return of the Jedi. We bought it at auction. We were able to get it out pretty quick. I mean, we got it out that week. It just took that whole week to rebuild the whole game. Let's see what else. We've purchased some really cool stuff. I mean, we've purchased Star Wars trilogies at the auctions.
Did we get our Paperboys from auction?
No. Let's see. We purchased this ultra rare Espiel at auction. Still hasn't actually made it out. ultra rare.
I'm thinking of the board set and the photo machine.
Oh, well, so yeah.
That was an interesting one.
Well, we've purchased these photo machines before just for the monitors and their Naomi board, their Sega Naomi photo machines that use original arcade monitors and original arcade hardware. So we've purchased those when they come up, and really, I mean, a photo machine does not use its monitor the same way an arcade will. There's not nearly as much burn. It was that was one of my favorite purchases ever. Geez, we have, what is the air hockey table that we still haven't put out?
Boomerang.
We have a pretty rare Boomerang air hockey table. It's a 2-player side-by-side air hockey table that Richard and I have spent some serious epic nights 1v1 playing air hockey, and eventually we're gonna get that out on the floor. But we got that.
I forgot all about that. It's still in your dad's garage.
It is hidden away, about as far away as possible.
It's not even on free play property, ladies and gentlemen.
We need to get it back. We need to get it back. I mean, and yeah, we've bought things like Cyberball. We've bought some pretty interesting games, and a ton of Galagas and mispacks, fighting games galore, Dynamo cabinets with decent monitors, that kind of stuff. We've purchased every once in a while, like a major distributor will have one of these style of auctions, and recently National Entertainment Network had what was a 1,700 item auction, and just about exhausted every single buyer. And it was a 2-day auction in the I mean, every buyer in the area was filled. I ended up buying 3 or 4 truckloads.
Yep.
And I wish I had been able to buy more, but I couldn't go back the second day. Except I was still bidding online because they had it out. It was complicated auction, but I mean, that was National Entertainment Network, which is, they used to operate as Sugarloaf. That was them basically getting out of arcades. They had at least 100 Dynamo cut corner running various fighting games. They had a bunch of like Crazy Taxi Naomis,
which we now own a few of.
Right, Daytonas, Cruisins, all of the Sega racers too, that were the more rare ones, like the Indy and that kind of stuff. Just an unbelievable auction, and that's the beautiful thing. You never have a clue what you're gonna get. We bought a Rev X at that auction just to save all of our other Rev X's. Like it was broken in a way that we could still use the parts to fix it, and that's one of the reasons, if the price is right at the auction, we'll almost always buy whatever is there, because we know we have a use for it.
Because we're hoarders.
Well, if the monitor is good, if the parts are good, we're going to be able to use that in the future. I mean, in a world where we're spending probably $30,000 or $40,000 just on parts outside of all of our in-house stock every year, these arcade games become more and more valuable to us compared to anyone else.
It's true.
So yeah, we go to these auctions. We make people hate us by paying. I mean, basically, we're gonna buy what we want to buy, and we very rarely get outbid on a game that we really want or need.
It's true, but it's also an interesting dynamic, because when we started going to auctions, we were buying everything. I mean, first few auctions, it was, that's a good deal, let's buy it. And now, as we have amassed the massive collection that we have today, the dynamics changed. Instead of going and buying everything, we're looking for specific pieces. We like rare pieces. We like pieces that we can actually use, and we're not as motivated just to buy every Miss Pac-Man that we ever see.
Yeah, you're right. Our Miss Pac prices that we want to pay, that we're willing to pay, have probably come down over time, as we now have Miss Pacs at all of our locations. We have Miss Pac cocktails. We've got Miss Pac stand-ups. We've got extra things on our new Arcade Anywhere project where we're placing games. We've got Miss Pacs everywhere. So where we used to be like, yeah, we just want to buy Miss Pacs, now it has to be, it actually has to work for us.
Right.
And it's true.
Well, the storage space is actually something we have to take into consideration now.
Right. We probably have 10,000, 12,000 square feet of warehouse space.
Yeah.
And we burn through that as fast as possible. We
use
it.
Always full.
And that doesn't include our arcades, which is another 12,000 square feet of space that we use. So you walk into these auctions, you get your bidder number, you walk it up and down, you try to test it. You never know what you're really going to get in these auctions. There's all sorts of hidden emulation, all sorts of hacked up games that work at the auction, and you get them home and they don't even function at all. And
didn't we get... we got that weird golf game that the monitor had just been taped in. Someone just used it. It wasn't even packaging tape. It was just like Scotch tape that was holding this LCD monitor in the cabinet.
Yeah, and I mean, and I didn't even want to buy that game. I bought it for a whole different auction strategy reason. But yeah, we got it back, and it was just held on like Scotch taped. And that's par for the course, though. You'll get home and you'll open it up, and everything's just sitting on the bottom, and you can't figure out how it worked when it was on the auction floor, but it did, because the auction companies, they're doing everything they can to make sure that they get these games up
and the owners of those games, they're trying to make sure that they get the maximum amount of money that they can for the game. So they're servicing the games on site, trying to make sure that they're running. As soon as we've gotten games back that the boards weren't secured, they were just leaning against the side of the cabinet, and as soon as you went to load up the game, the entire board set went crashing down. We've had weird monitors. We've had cabinets that were mysteries. Like, we bought Neo Geo cabinets that wouldn't turn on, and opened them up, and some of them, they've got 4 Neo Geo games inside, and other ones, they're just completely bare. They don't even have a board set inside.
Well, and we've had a lot more games than you'd ever expect that we buy because that monitor looks pretty nice. Mm-hmm. And we get back to the shop, we start looking at it, and all of a sudden we realize this is like a brand new monitor that probably hasn't been in there very long, that they just put in there to fix the game. Mm-hmm. And then no one really played it. And that has happened more than should have happened, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we go to these auctions, we buy these games. I guess when we first started, you're talking about most working games, most just like generic working games, like a Street Fighter 2 or a Neo Geo. You're talking $200, $300 in a reasonable condition. Nowadays, those same games are $500, $600. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have blamed us for the market. And we in DFW, we definitely
we contribute to that a fair share.
It's not that, but in general, it's also the economy has kind of come up. Everyone has a little bit of extra money, and also our generation is now at the point where they might want to buy one of these games.
Oh, absolutely.
And there was a big gap there. The boomers, they didn't really buy that many arcade games for home use, but with no arcades left, except for us, thank goodness. But without very many arcades, most people have to buy these games to get their childhood back. Mm-hmm. And
we find that outside of auctions, through a lot of the private sellers that we deal with, we are always surprised at the number of people who their houses are just filled with arcade games, pinball machines, different things. And it's always an adventure when we go to meet people there as well.
We bought a Lunar Lantern auction. I just remembered that. That one was awesome. That was a launch game for Free Play Richardson. Coming back.
Had the spring issue to start with.
And now we've got some weird board issue, but it is going to be close. And it's going to be coming back soon. A Lunar Lantern. I don't even think I've seen really that many for sale since then.
No.
And this was an original Lunar Lantern, a dedicated Lunar Lantern, which is a little bit more rare than the Lunar Lantern, the factory conversion in the Asteroids cabinet, but no one cares about that but us. But it's still really, really cool. And let's see, Lunar Lander, Return of the Jedi. We bought a dedicated Star Wars, Space Duel. Yep. Lots of cool vector stuff.
That Star Wars, when we paid however much we paid for it, we made a lot of people angry.
Right.
They were all online. Everyone was making comments about how ridiculous it was and everything, and we're just like watching it, and we're like, whatever.
Yeah, well, right. Back then we paid $1,300 for Star Wars. That now
a week later, didn't one sell for like $1,800?
Right, and now those are $3,000, $4,000 games depending on the. Most people won't sell them for less. People don't want to pay that, but it's just how the market is nowadays. So yeah, auctions, huge source of games. Not necessarily games that just quickly go to the floor, but it's a good way for us to just kind of bolster our collection, bolster our parts,
right,
and acquire things for a relatively small price, because a lot of stuff you get from the auction has hidden issues, problems, and everyone going to the auction knows that.
Well, yeah, you have to take that into consideration when you're paying a premium for these games. But, another point about auctions is they're a great place for us to occasionally unload some games that we don't need to keep in our warehouses or collections. We did a couple other bulk deals early on in this, and one of them we got a ton of redemption games. And I remember, what were they? The shoot-'em-up basketball games?
Yeah, we had shoot-'em-up basketball games, all sorts of stuff. And we put that in...
Crane machines.
Yeah, crane machines, a ton of things like 10 maximum forces.
Things that we did not have an interest in. We had too many of things that were just filling up our warehouses. And for us, when we go to these things, they always have very large redemption lineups. And there are plenty of operators and people who these are still very profitable machines for. But unfortunately, given what we do, it's not part of our market.
Right. It's a great way for us to get them in the hands of people that need them.
Right.
And we have no interest in them.
But I was so happy because we sold all 5 of our shoot 'em up basketball machines for $25. It was
Right.
a lot of 5.
So it's $5 a game, but at least we didn't have to bring them home.
We didn't have to put them on the truck and take them home.
And that was a little bit of a disappointment watching the auction go, because all of a sudden it turns out that this was gonna. You never know how the auction's gonna be. Every auction's different, and we showed up and there were like 900 items already there, and we start putting our things in, and then you start counting the buyers, and you realize, wow, there's gonna be games that are gonna come home with people.
Well, wasn't there a guy at that auction? He had brought like 2 truckloads full of games, like 40 games.
Yeah, and I've never seen that crew back. They had, I mean, he had 2 employees there unloading games, probably 50 or 60 games they brought, and they probably put 30 back on the truck. And I remember,
So sad.
I mean, I don't know their name, so this isn't giving away too much. I remember their check for selling 30 or 40 games was like $500, and they had to take like 30 back with them. And the auctioneer felt terrible. Everyone felt terrible about the situation, but every auction is different, and sometimes there just aren't buyers.
You never know what you're getting into.
And so, I mean, auctions are good. And just to be clear, though, we never sell anything, especially anymore.
Right.
As of the moment we opened the arcade, we pretty much stopped selling anything that could possibly be useful. When we're unloading something, it's either we have everything that we could possibly use off of it, or it's such a wreck that we just acquired it as part of a bulk deal, or it's like a redemption game or something like that. But we have become hoarders, basically.
Absolutely.
We used to, when we were first buying some of these things, we're like, well, we always know we got into it at the right price and we could unload it. And now every single game, there's so many games that we've sold, and that was covered in some of the previous podcasts. There's so many games that we've sold that I just say, why did we ever sell anything?
We never should have.
And unfortunately, since we've opened the arcade, nothing we've let go of. One of our bulk deals, we bought 50-something games that had been kind of traded back and forth from the different operators in Dallas, and they were all like laughing at us like we were suckers when we bought it, because seriously, every single major reseller or operator had touched this lot. And then there were like 3 items in there that we really, really wanted, and we were completely willing to pay just for those 3 items. And we were just like, we got 37 extra games or whatever. And we took them to auction. We sold them. I mean, there were some EM pinballs that were barely working, kind of working.
We made it worthwhile for us.
Right. We wanted those 3 games. It didn't matter. But those are the kind of things we'll unload at auction. Rough condition, kind of things that just can never make it to the arcade floor.
Things that need a full refurbish to get back into running order, things that need monitors, things that need, all new side art.
And what we were just talking about earlier, the most crushing sell of all that's going to come up, the full motion power drift that we acquired, fully working. We've been able to maintain it. We've been able to repair all issues with it.
Oh, it's so much fun.
A full working deluxe motion power drift. Maybe the only still working motion power drift in the country. It's right over there, and it weighs 1,000 pounds.
Yep.
We can't do anything with it, and it's full motion. And if you've ever been to Free Play Arcade, you know what happens at night with the people at Free Play Arcade after they've had a beer or 2. They're gonna sit that drink right on the game, and it's a whole car-sized thing moves back and forth.
Yep.
It would be trashed in a second. It would be destroyed. So we're probably going to take it to auction, because I have tried to find a good home for this game. I have posted it up and kind of said, if you have the means and resources to pick it up, we're almost going to give it to you. But there's only one group that has the means and ability to pick 1,000-pound arcade game up, and it's us. And we're stuck with it forever until we put it in auction and pray that someone doesn't realize how much it weighs and buys it. I'm not trying. It's amazing. I want it forever.
It's so much fun.
I want it forever in my life, but it's going to take an auction to get rid of it, because someone will make an impulse buy, and then we'll probably have to help them load it in their truck with our lift gate, our big strong lift gate, to get it into their truck, and then just wave to it as it leaves. Sadly, because we'll never buy another one of those. We'll never even see another one of those. But that's the type of thing we have to send to auction, because it can never work in any of our enterprises, period.
Right, and if we can't put that and make that accessible for people to play, then there's no reason for us to have it.
Right, it would be, well, and that is actually what I've just been trying to give it to a good home, but 1,000-pound arcade game. I mean, there's no husband in the world that could take that home, and it would fill a 2-car garage. You couldn't even just leave it in 1-car spot, because as you tilt over, it's going to bang everything in the garage. All right, so that was kind of auctions. We're going to try to shift into We do a lot of private party deals. We do. I mean, nowadays, the majority of our purchases are private party deals.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we have pickers out kind of looking for stuff. They know that they can sell it to us. And we also have arcade collectors around the country that know we do what we say. That's the biggest thing I've ever done, right? If I say I'm going to pay a certain amount, I'm not going to renegotiate ever. I'm going to bring that money and I'm going to pay it. And if it's my bad, it's my bad. If you know, it's not a big deal to us.
Well, right. Sometimes we make deals sight unseen. You know,
Right.
we've seen some photos online. There's been some descriptions. We offer a price. We commit to that price. We pick them up. We find out that things are not quite as well represented as or in as good of condition as they were represented. And, you know, we still follow through and we still buy those games. We still make them work.
Well, and sometimes it's the other way. Sometimes the photos didn't really fully capture the beauty of the arcades that we're going to buy, and we get there and we're really happy that we made the deal. So it's not like, I mean, we just always do what we say we're going to do. We're not going to change what our deal.
I even remember one deal that we were doing that they had, gosh, I don't even remember which game it was at this point, but they had a game listed for a certain price, and Corey and me both show up to buy this game, and the guy is asking for like $400 for this cabinet. We show up and Corey's just like, look, dude, that is way too cheap for this. I would feel bad taking this game from you at this price. It's actually worth about, $600-700. I've got $600. It's yours for the game.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I find it more important to build those relationships with people who are selling games, because people have told me I can't have every arcade game that's ever been made, but I keep buying them. Right. So these people who have acquired arcade games, I want them to have such a great relationship with us and just know that, hey, if they say they're going to come, they're going to do me right, that they'll call us when they find something really cool. Yeah. And especially since we're going to put it out to the public, there's a good subset of the people that we deal with that are just like, I'm excited. Not only are y'all going to make a deal and honor that deal, you're going to put the game out and let people play it.
Well, and then they get to, so many people, when we pick up games from them, they tell me, oh man, I'm going to be able to come play this at your place.
Well, right. And
I don't have to say goodbye.
For example, the Revolution X that we have in Richardson, we've now probably dealt with that guy 3, 4, 5 times, and he comes and he visits his game like they're his children that he's like given to us to watch over. And he's just like playing his old Revolution X. He's like, this is awesome. And so every time he wants to get rid of a game, he comes to us first. We always, offer him a fair price, and that's just how we do it. But with these private parties, there's been some weird stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, arcade games are owned, they're big. So you're often dealing with people who have lots of space. Most of the people who have lots of space are not living in normal, like, city limits. You're talking, like, people who have huge metal storage buildings on their property where they've just kind of inherited and brought in all these weird games and stuff. And these people can be kind of strange. But regardless, we've had so many kind of interesting, unique experiences in buying games. And for a long time, that was one of my favorite things that we did. It was so awesome going and meeting all these different people. But I do want to talk about some of the weirder stuff.
Okay.
I'm going to get into the weirdest deal I've ever done.
Okay.
It was a Craigslist ad, and the guy said he had a it was a Star Trek, a Gyrus, and an Asteroids Deluxe. So I respond and I say, hey, your prices seem a little fair. Let me come check out the games, and maybe we can work out a deal. And I remember you were out doing something. The arcade, I think, was even open at this point.
Okay.
It was early. You were doing something. Everyone was doing something. I hop in the truck and I say, we don't have the Asteroids Deluxe was the prize that I was after. And I go there, I drive, and next thing you know, I turn down a dirt road. And then my GPS is telling me to turn down another dirt road and another dirt road. And I pull into this thing, and it's got like this big business sign, and like it looks like it's a professional shop, like an auto mechanic shop. And I pull up, and probably like a dozen dogs just fly past me, like no tags or anything. And I'm just like, all right. So I open the door, I go to the door, and there are at least 30 people in the living room. Like, I knock on the door, and it's just a screen door on an old kind of country-style house. They've got a bunch of outbuildings like every country house has. I knock on the door, and all 30 of these people come out. And this guy, he introduces him. He's like, hey, that's my ad. And I was like, yeah, I never got your name. And he introduces himself as Alpha Omega. And I was like, all right, what? I'd had pretty interesting interactions already, so it didn't even really faze me. I was like, cool. So we walk into one of his outbuildings, and he has this Asteroid Deluxe that's covered with Playboy stickers. And I was like, all right, this is a little different than I expected, man. And he was like, but you can get it working, right? And I was like, it's not even working. Like, the whole time I thought we were buying a working game. And so I start just being like, man, I'm going to have to, you're going to be so insulted by the offer, I should probably just leave. He's like, hold on. Maybe we can work out a deal. And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, come to this next building. So we go to the next outbuilding, and they're getting worse and worse as we go. And he finds a gyrus buried in everything. And the stupid gyrus turns right on and looks beautiful. I was like, oh, man. And I remember it was upside down. And so then which is a dip switch setting. So, like, maybe the dip switch has gone out. The negotiator in my head's like, maybe I'm going to get these games really, really cheap. And then, but I was the whole time just like, man, these are, like, not good. I don't want these games. And he's like, maybe we'll work something out. So he takes me to another outbuilding where there's people already in there drinking beer, moonshine, who even knows? And in the middle of the table is like probably a 14 or 13-year-old girl. And I'm like 30 years old at the time. And he wants to introduce me to his daughter. And I was like, this is getting, and I'm married at the time too, to your sister. And I'm just like, this is getting really strange. And I swear to you, was starting like a courtship process with this 14, and I was like, dude, I just met you. And he was like, you seem to have a pretty good business or something. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. And it turned out he had a ton of kids, and it was a big weird extended family. I don't have a clue. And I mean, his name was Alpha Omega. I don't have so basically I try as nicely as possible to extract myself. And I was in that next outbuilding like an hour, and I had some of their beer. I mean, free beer is free beer. And then he takes me to the next outbuilding, and there is a great Star Trek. In fact, that is the Star Trek that sits, and it's an original Irish conversion Star Trek, which is extremely rare. But it's a real, authentic cabinet that they put into, what was that? That was Asteroids Deluxe. Oh. But the Irish version of Asteroids Deluxe, they converted into Star Treks naturally in Ireland. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I guess I want it. And so we start working on a deal. We got the game super cheap. And then he brought like 3 or 4 of his sons, and we'd walked over like fields and hills and stuff. And there's no roads or anything paved connecting them. And so he starts negotiating with me. He's like, all right, we've made a deal for the games. How much are you going to pay us to get them to your truck? And I was like, that makes sense, actually, because I don't have a clue how I'm going to get these to the truck. And we ended up working up a deal where I had to drive the truck like through like a valley and like up a hill. I parked the truck up there. Like his sons converge at the same time with dollies with the games. I gave him like $60 extra for bringing the games to me. I loaded up, and then he was seriously like, so I want to talk about my daughter. And it was that 14-year-old girl. And I was just like, hey man, I don't know what to tell you. And he's like, all right, forget my daughter. Will you hire one of my sons? And I was like, hire one of you for what? And he was like, did you see them move those games? I was like, actually, that was pretty impressive, but we're not really at the stage where we need a dedicated game mover. And he was like, they'll do anything. You don't even have to pay them what you're supposed to pay them. And I was like, this is so strange. And I still have his phone, and he still emails me when he gets games in, but it's the only place that no matter what, that's not true. If he sent me something really, really cool, I'd probably have to go marry his daughter or something, and just deal with the consequences. But he still sends me emails all the time that are like, look at this new game I found. And they're always covered in Playboy stickers, and they're always weird games. The Asteroids Deluxe with the Playboy stickers never made it out. No, it's still sitting in the original storage.
Yep. Saw it the other day.
The Gyrus is not one that we had out, but that will make it out. And of course, the Star Trek is on the floor. Free Play Arlington right now, and beautiful,
absolutely
and awesome.
Plays great.
So yeah, I mean, and geez, now that I said it out loud, there's probably even weirder deals we've had. But you have a really cool deal. Okay. You have a really cool story, and it's about a game that we were trying to for a while get, and they don't come up for sale very often because there's only 500 or 600 of them that were ever made. We're talking, of course, of the 6-player X-Men, and I'm going to take it over.
All right, so we had been looking for a 6-player X-Men for about 3 years at this point. We knew it was on our list of games that we wanted to have to make the arcade experience, but we just couldn't find one.
Now, hold on. We got to set up the 6-player X-Men. The 6-player X-Men is a glorious Konami brawler. It's a 3-button for 6 different players.
All simultaneously.
Using 2 25-inch monitors side by side with the image split between the two monitors, which is not like, I mean, it's rare, but it did happen in arcades. And this cabinet is probably 800, 900 pounds.
Oh, absolutely.
Massive. And it comes in like 2 or 3 parts, depending on how brave you are. And it's a wonderful game that everyone remembers playing, and they don't even remember where. They just know that existed and that they played it. So we wanted one. We knew it would really help the arcade experience. We've been looking for it, and then we found one.
We found one. It was in California, and we started talking to the guy online, and he says he is not going to sell this game to anyone who is not local.
Yeah, and so, as was kind of normal, I started the talking to the person, and I was doing everything I could to, minimize his concern. I was saying, look, we're good people. We'll ship the game. It'll be okay. More people will get to play it. It's going to be amazing. And he was like, I'm not shipping the game. I'm not selling it to someone from Texas. Like, he did not want to sell it to us or anyone really, probably. He was probably trying to be overly protective. And so, I mean, we really wanted this game.
Well, so Corey puts me on it, and I take a look at it, and I realize that I could probably fly to California, buy the game in person, and ship it back, all for under what the actual price of the game should be.
Right. Well, what we expected to pay for the game, we calculated based on our different shipping arrangements that we knew about. I mean, we have different shippers we use, and we had a drop-off shipper where you could drop it off at the airport, and they'd fly it to DFW. So we did the math, and it worked out. So
we had a bunch of messages that we started communicating, and I got really into this. I was like, all right, well, we've got to make this work. So we created an account. I put together an email address. I got a Google Voice phone number that said that I lived in San Diego, California. And within 36 hours, we put together a deal. Right up to the night before, I'm trying to book plane tickets online. I'm researching things. I'm calling people, asking them to build me custom pallets. I'm putting together truck rentals. I'm trying to figure out all of the stuff that's going on.
Because again, this is like an 800 or 900 pound game that the most reliable and reasonable shipper was going to have to fly it. So you're going to have to put it on a pallet that was able to be loaded onto a jet airplane to be taken to DFW, where we would then hopefully reacquire it.
Well, we start talking, and I'm doing all this research, and I'm trying to do things. And I'm just like, he's hesitant to commit. And I'm just like, I just need an answer, yes or no. I'm sitting there waiting to book flights, watching them jump, $200-$300 for my tickets for round trip.
He thinks you're in Santa Barbara.
Well, yeah. He thinks that I'm, 2 hours away. I'm going to rent a U-Haul and drive in. And at 9 o'clock the night before, he says yes. So I book a flight for 7 o'clock in the morning the next day, and we start going. I confirm everything with all of my shippers. I've got someone who's going to build me a custom pallet. I've got a truck rental situation that we've got underway, and I figure out a trip that within... I am in California. I flew out of Texas at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I hopped back on a plane at 3 o'clock in the morning to come back home.
Right, the latest red-eye flight they had.
24-hour round trip to go pick up this game. And now, this all was great in theory, but, the night before, I'm like, all right, what are we going to do? So I pack a suitcase. I put all of the moving blankets that I can into it. I put ratchet straps, all sorts of stuff. I packed this up, and I'm like, I'm not taking anything else. I've got my backpack that has some stuff. I throw a couple of tools in because I know I'm going to need to disassemble this because this is a massive game, by the way. And I hop on the flight. As soon as I land at the airport, this is my favorite part about this, is as soon as I land at the airport, one of our bartenders, Mike, he shoots me a text message, and he's like, hey, man, did you see the 6-player X-Men for sale in Louisiana? And I'm like, no, what do you mean? He's like, I'm telling him, I'm in LA right now buying a 6-player X-Men. And he's like, oh, you're in Louisiana. I'm like, no. I'm in California buying a 6-player X-Men as we speak. And he's just like, oh, okay. And so I'm just like, oh, darn it. So I started looking it up, and of course, they're asking twice as much for...
And it's not really working.
Oh, no,
either.
it's not working. It's in terrible condition. And the price that we would have paid for that one in terrible condition is still cheaper than booking the round-trip tickets and the freight shipping and everything else that we did to make this happen.
Now, as a side note, we don't necessarily or would ever encourage, pretending that you're from a certain area. But...
It is my great shame.
The arcade world is cutthroat. People will do anything they can to get these games out from under us. And we've had every single trick in the book. And we wanted this 6-player X-Men so much. And we really wanted it. We weren't negotiating with the guy. We were going to handle all the arrangements. And he just wouldn't sell it to us because we were from Texas. And something in our heads just blew. Mm-hmm. And we said, you know what? That's now the X-Men we want to have. Now...
We paid his full asking price for the game.
Right. We didn't negotiate. We didn't do anything. Now, he ended up being a pretty good
guy.
He was
a really nice guy, by the way.
He just, for whatever reason...
his name, but
didn't want to deal.
I hope he's not watching.
Well, it'd be tough for him to get it back. No, he didn't want to deal with... It was probably just a convenience thing. I don't know. He did not want to deal with Texans. We went there... Well, you went there. I did not go there. You went there.
So, I arrive, my flight gets in. I've left. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. I get in. I immediately go down the street to rent my 16-foot box truck or U-Haul or whatever that I've gotten at the time. Maybe it was a 12-foot U-Haul. And I suddenly realized that I'm in downtown Los Angeles in a big box truck and I can't find anywhere to park. So I'm like, okay, this isn't a problem. I drive by Home Depot, I pick up some more packaging material so that I can wrap it up and secure it all to the pallet, do all of this stuff. I call up the pallet people. I'm like, we're good. I'm ready for you to build that for me. I'll be by, this afternoon. And I'm shooting this guy messages trying to arrange things because originally he had said that we could, do a deal, pick it up on his lunch break. I was going to go by, pick up the pallet afterwards and everything. And he starts getting a little flaky on me. And he starts saying that, I'm not going to be able to leave the shop. It might be, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock that I'm able to meet you, all of these different things. And I'm start going, oh.
Well, your head starts exploding because you're like, I'm going to miss my flight. I've already booked. Building a pallet for an 800-pound arcade game, not cheap.
Right.
Arranging shipping and making sure that they're going to stay late, not easy. And so you're like, all your plans are just falling apart in front of your eyes.
Well, entirely. And so I decide, okay, I'm going to go pick up the pallet beforehand, and I'll just, make up some terrible excuse for why I've got a giant pallet in the U-Haul that I'm picking up this game with.
That you're taking locally.
Locally, of course. Anyway, we go through and we sort out all of these details, and as we start doing this, I start wondering how I am going to unload this game, get it onto the pallet, and drop it off at the air freight shipper. And so I start calling everyone I know in LA or who knows anyone in LA. I make Facebook posts. I start looking around. I'm asking people, on the street, hey, if I toss you some money, will you help me do all of this stuff?
Well, because of course a pallet sits a few inches off the ground, and to get the game onto the pallet, you would have to lift
700-800 pounds.
Parts of the 700, which even the lightest is 400 or 500 pounds. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking 400 pounds on each piece. That you have to, well, actually, that's not true. It's one piece that's about 100 pounds, and then another piece that's 600 pounds.
Absolutely.
Or 700 pounds. So you had to figure out a way that you were going to lift that 3 or 4 inches into the air and set it in the middle of a pallet that you then had to strap the game to, get to an air freight company, have them accept the shipment, which air freight is complicated.
Oh, very. I learned this along the process because even though I've communicated with them and I've arranged everything, we had a couple of snafus with our shipment. So, but we'll get there in just a second.
So you show up there, you've got a pallet, you've got a truck.
I go through this terribly rundown. I found out there's an entire part of LA that is nothing but places that build pallets. They just recycle pallets, and there's an entire couple of blocks of this. And there are people hanging out dealing drugs on the street corners and all down the streets. And
oh yeah, I would assume a pallet building area of town would not be the nicest part of town.
Not at all. But I contact the guys over there. I show up. They have not started building the pallet. I'm like, oh, I'm here to pick it up. They think that what I'm doing is insane. But they go ahead, they build the pallet for me right then and there on the spot. I pay them, load it into my truck, and proceed to just work out the logistics. We finally, we're going back and forth between this, and I get a time that I'm going to meet him at his place. And so I am just killing time trying to figure out, game plan everything in my head and make sure that it all is going to work.
Well, you're in sunny California, hanging out in your box
In
truck
my
with
box
your
truck
pallet.
that I can't park anywhere.
Fair
It's
enough.
terrible. I stopped at a gas station and I couldn't even pull under. Gas stations in LA, they're super small. I guess I'm spoiled by all the gas stations here.
We have land in Texas.
Oh, it's great. But no, I pulled inside and I got some snacks, and that's the only food that I ate.
Well, and the whole time you're calling me every hour or so, I'm being like, all right, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. I'm like, I'm sure this will all work out. It's fine.
Oh, yeah. My sister's freaking out. She's like, I don't think he can handle this.
At my end, I'm just like, yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Well, yeah, we figure it all out. But I show up at the guy's house. We've found the everything, and I back up the U-Haul. He's out working in his yard, and he is the nicest guy in the world.
So where's the game at?
So he's got a really nice house in the suburbs. It has a long driveway that goes back to a garage. His kids, they're on hoverboards in the driveway, running around everything, and he opens up this garage, and there is stuff everywhere. But sitting right there in front of the door, it's got action figures and things piled on top of it and things. He has this beautiful 6-player X-Men machine, and we've already agreed on the price. I've got the cash. We do the exchange. We do everything, and I'm just like, how are we going to load this up onto the ramped truck that I have? Because, again, no lift gate for a rental.
Well, yeah, it's very difficult in general to get a lift gate on a rental truck, and especially in short notice. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of things that occasionally we've been able to pull that off. I mean, now we own our own trucks.
Very, very rarely.
But yeah, you book it a week or two in advance, and you hope that they still actually have it. Because every time they're going to be like, wait, you wanted a lift gate? Here's your ramp. And... Yep. You had a ramp in California with a 700 or 800 pound X-Men arcade game.
Well, fortunately, this guy's the nicest guy in the world, and he shows me how to take it apart. And so it's an entire process in and of itself. We have to take off the control panel. We have to take out one of the monitors. And that breaks it into 3 pieces that we're then able to wheel up the ramp with the 2 of us pushing, and I think his son also helping us do all of this. So the 3 of us are beast pushing this thing up this ramp, and I'm sitting here going, how am I going to get all of this stuff off the truck? Well, that's going to be
You're in the truck. Did he see the pallet?
Oh, totally. He saw the pallet.
What did he say?
I just made up some stupid excuse for it. He really didn't.
He was such a nice guy. He was just... Well, and I mean... In his defense, it's not like he's going to suspect some crazy person has flown from DFW, pretended to be from San Diego
with my San Diego phone number
just
and
so they
email
could
address.
buy a 6-player X-Men. So you could have just been like, "Oh yeah, I'll need that later." It doesn't matter because
I was like, I don't know, they left it in the truck or something.
The truth is so much. It's not even conceivable to someone.
It's ridiculous.
All right, so you get it all up in the truck.
We get it all up in the truck, and this guy is so nice the entire time. He's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm not sure if the sound works on that board. I've got another X-Men board that I'm just going to give you."
All right, so let's take a quick break to talk about how terrible the soundboard is on a 6-player X-Men.
Oh, yes.
It has the soundboard alone, and its little sound kind of chip. It has, I can't even remember, 8 or 10 capacitors that are the amplifier that relate to the amplifier to send the sound signal into the speakers, and it's got stereo speakers and all of that. These are notoriously unreliable, and there's all sorts of ways that we can fix it. And once we got the X-Men to Richardson, we were able to fix it. But I think now remember, they only made 500 or 600 of these 6-player X-Men's. He hands you a box with a board in it,
more than one board,
with 3 or 4
X-Men boards,
6-player X-Men boards,
and they have all sorts of notations on them. Some of them say that the sound doesn't work. Some of them say other things aren't working. And I'm just sitting here going, oh, I feel so bad about this exchange.
He's selling it. I mean, we paid his asking, but he's selling it a little under market. Mm-hmm. And each of those boards is those are expensive boards.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know what the broken ones would have sold for, but this is still a significant just bonus.
Absolutely.
Popping up. And again,
well, no idea.
You're deceiving him the whole time.
I'm sitting here going, I think I told him that my buddy was opening up a comic book shop, and that we've been looking for this game because we think that it would be a great centerpiece.
It fits the theme
in the comic book shop.
Well, and I guess it's really lucky that in Dallas-Fort Worth, we don't really have accents. I mean, we do kind of, but most people wouldn't really be able to pick it up.
Howdy, y'all.
Right. I mean, that was the other. He probably thought people from Texas had some sort of like southern drawl or something. And so you just show up there. He never suspects a thing.
Never suspects a thing. I mean, we talk about
We're
everything.
the worst people in the world. We're terrible.
I'm a terrible human being.
Awful.
This is
All right.
one of the low points of.
So you got in
my
truck.
arcade career.
He hooked you up with 4 beautiful X-Men boards.
4 X-Men boards and a Simpsons board that he... we finished loading the truck and he's like, hey, I've got a Simpsons board too. Do you have any use for this? And I'm just like,
terrible.
Yeah, I'll take that.
This is the corruption of Richard by the arcade, by Corey forcing arcade deals to happen.
I learned from the best.
All right, so you got in the truck.
We got everything in the truck. We get everything strapped down and secured. I've got all my straps and blankets and everything. And I'm like, yeah, we're good to go. So it's at this point that I'm like, all right, not a problem. At this point, it's like 8 o'clock at night. I've got an hour drive to the freight shipping company. And I give him a call. I'm like, hey, I'm on my way, everything. And when I'm talking to them on the phone, I tell them that, unfortunately, the pallet that was built for me is 2 inches bigger than I had originally quoted.
And, of course, when you're flying an airplane full of shipments, each little measurement counts a lot into how they're going to build the plane that they're sending out.
Oh, absolutely. And so I've gotten a quote for how much the shipment's going to be, all of this stuff. I've arranged it so that I can just drop it off. And they're like, oh, we can't accept your shipment. And I'm sitting here going, I'm supposed to be on a plane in like 3 hours. I have to be at the airport to check in to get my flight. All of these things going on. I am talking with them until I get right outside their shipping facility. And I'm talking to the third person on the phone. And I'm just like, I'm sitting in your parking lot right now. I have an 800-pound game that I don't know how I'm going to get off the truck and onto this pallet. I have to catch a plane in 3 hours. I'm just looking for some help. I've exhausted all of my resources. I've talked to everyone I know in California. I've talked to college friends. I've talked to former people that I've worked with. They've been searching for, using their networks of people to try and find people to help me do all of this stuff. And the dude's just like, whoa, you're outside? Hold on one sec. Guy runs out. He runs down to the truck. We start talking and he's like, dude, I got some guys inside who will help you. Nice. I'm just like, shoot, yeah, absolutely. Y'all save my ass.
Well, and I mean, basically, this every part of this, it's like something good happened to make it work.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I back the truck up, and next thing I know, I've got a team of guys. There are 15 guys there who are trying to help me get this thing off the ramp. They bring over a forklift to try and lift it off. I'm like, I'm not sure that's going to work with this game. There's no way to get under it and all this stuff. And they're like, all right. So I get 5 guys helping me pull this down the ramp, lift it all up onto the pallet. I've got all my pallet wrap, my straps and things. We're securing it and banding it to the pallet. And then, I'm insisting to these guys because beforehand I had been walking down the street, trying to beg people I saw walking by. I was like, hey man, for $50, will you help me unload this thing? And I'm just like, dude, I got to do something for your entire crew. So I go ahead and I order a bunch of pizzas for them. I'm going to feed all of y'all right now because y'all have just saved my ass.
So they took the game.
They took the game.
They put it on the pallet.
I had to negotiate everything, but basically I signed an agreement that said, I'm going to be shipping this game no matter what you charge me.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm calling Corey and I'm like, they could send us something ridiculous. But
I remember that phone call being like, well, I guess it's too late, so that's fine.
Yep.
I guess that's what's going to happen.
Well, it was perfectly reasonable, actually.
And then, yeah, the price didn't even really increase much at all. It was negligible.
Absolutely.
It was whatever 2 inches would have cost. Thank goodness. And
Well,
that's
yeah.
Pilot Air. Let's go ahead and give them some props. That's
Woo,
Pilot
Pilot
Air.
Air.
We very rarely use them because it's a terminal-to-terminal delivery. and getting the people that we're buying arcade games from in New York or whatever very rarely will take it to the airport. I mean, we would love it if they did, but very rarely they're going to take it to the airport to Pilot Air to get it to us, and they all have to. Every game has to be palleted and
wrapped,
palletized. I don't know the right word.
Well,
we're good.
Well, yeah, but no, we did the entire thing. I packed up all of the suitcase that I brought. It actually fit inside the X-Men game.
It's a big game.
It's a massive game. And so I fit that in there with all of my extra supplies, straps, materials, everything. I closed it up, pallet wrapped the entire thing, left the extra pallet wrap for the guys at Pilot Air.
They were like, that's all we have is pallet wrap. And you're like, take it.
I was like, I don't have use for it, dude. And they were like, awesome, more pallet wrap. No, they were the nicest people in the world. They helped get that all taken care of. We get everything loaded, ready to go. They've got pizza on the way. Their entire crew is happy. They think that I'm just this ridiculous guy.
That's the craziest thing that's probably happened ever for them. They're just like, a guy shows up at 9 p.m. with a 800-pound 6-player X-Men begging us to help him because otherwise he's screwed.
Well, they're telling me that this is absolutely insane. They think that I'm insane. Like, they're all having a good laugh, and I think it was probably a pretty memorable night for them.
So then I guess they took it. You take the truck to U-Haul.
They took the game.
Whoever.
Yeah, I took the truck. Partway through the process, I've got my backpack that I'm going to walk through the airport with, and I realized that I've got a couple of things that I accidentally left in the truck that I had totally meant to throw in the X-Men game and wrap back on the pallet. So I haven't paid to ship a bag back or anything, and I've got my favorite pocket knife multi-tool. I've got a bunch of screwdrivers, and I've got some ratchet straps with some exposed metal hooks.
And of course, the TSA is not. I mean, the multi-tool alone, the TSA is gonna, gut you for.
I don't know about the other stuff, but I've been going at this point. I got like 2 hours of sleep the night before. I've been communicating with this guy and like doing this whole thing. I've been up for 24 hours straight at this point, and working for almost 36 hours straight, trying to make this deal happen. And as I'm getting out of the Uber that I'm at the airport, I'm just like, screw this. I just throw all the stuff in my backpack. I'm like, they're going to stop me. They're going to confiscate what they're going to confiscate. And I'm just going to, I'm done with it. I'm going to say goodbye to my favorite multi-tool. I just realized
where this story's going.
Well, I walk straight through TSA and no one stops me. So I'm not sure if I should be admitting that.
So now we're throwing the TSA under the bus. So through the story, we have impersonated someone from California so that we could buy a 6-player X-Men. We've then proceeded to hold Pilot Air's entire staff up for an extra hour so that we could get our precious
great people
800-pound X-Men. And then you take a knife through safety check, and the TSA doesn't even stop you.
They don't stop me at all.
I feel like you should be in prison for a while. Like, this is crazy. This is the most insane thing I've ever heard. Like, I've never even heard this full story. No. Like, sitting here, this is just blowing my mind. All right, so you took your knife on the plane.
I walked straight through security. My backpack goes through the scanner. I'm like waiting for it to beep, waiting for them to pull it off the conveyor and like stop me. It goes through. It falls into the tray at the bottom. I look at it and I'm confused as fuck. I'm sure if anyone was watching me, they were just.
I mean, maybe they just thought you were extra being safety conscious. You're going to ratchet strap yourself to the seat.
Maybe.
The plane's going to go down. You're not going to move an inch.
But I pick up my bag. I go. They're boarding the plane. It is they're doing last call on the plane. I get there right as they are boarding, get through security, do all of that stuff. And right as I'm walking through, I'm just like, there's a sandwich shop that's open. I have eaten a bag of chips and like a thing of peanuts in the last 24 hours. I'm getting a sandwich, and I don't care if I miss my flight home.
Maybe that's the tragedy, right? You didn't even get any of that pizza that you ordered for the crew.
Nope.
Oh, jeez.
Not at all.
All right, so did you make your plane?
I got the sandwich. I was the last person on the flight. It was like a scene out of a movie. I walked in, and they shut the door behind me.
It's the Home Alone, did we make it?
Yep.
And they're like, you made it. And you're like, yeah. And then you go to sleep.
Yep, I passed out on the flight back, and as soon as I got back, I think you were there to pick me up from the airport.
And that day, we talked to Pilot Air, and they had already sent the X-Men. We grabbed the truck, went to the airport,
picked it up.
They loaded the pallet into the back of the truck, and we had a 6-player X-Men.
All for a very reasonable price.
It was a good price. It was an insane journey.
Oh, absolutely.
But if there's any takeaway from this story, it's we will do absolutely anything to get the fine people of Dallas-Fort Worth the arcade games they need.
Yep.
And I will make you do all sorts of shady stuff in order to pull it off.
He's corrupting me and my sensible nature.
So I mean, that is. I'm sure we'll come back to this topic as to how we acquire things.
Well, we've got a lot of interesting game purchases over the years, so I'm sure that there's plenty of material there for some other podcasts.
But for now, we're signing off. This is episode 4 of How We Get Games, to be continued at some point in the future. But for now, we're going to close down the lab, get out of here, maybe go sleep on a plane.
Yeah.
And we're out. Thanks, guys.